welcome everyone. Let me just first start by making a photo. It's for Twitter, of course. That's good. Okay, you all put your hands in the air. Perfect. All right. Welcome everyone. Welcome everybody to the Home Assistant State of the Union 2019. Hello. Welcome everybody. My name is Paulus, Schoutsen, and 7 years ago, I started Home Assistant.
Holy cow! This is amazing! You look fantastic!
Thank you!
Well, hey, I came to find you guys because it's time for the conference to start. There's people waiting.
Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to the State of the Open Home 2022. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the 10-year anniversary of Home Assistant Stream. My name is Paulus Schoutsen and I'm the founder of Home Assistant.
Hi, and welcome to the State of the Open Home 2024. My name is Franck Nijhof.
And my name is Paulus Schoutsen.
And if you're looking at the State of the Open Home for the first time, Paulus, maybe you could tell what this is about?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about all the projects that make our community so awesome. That's not just Home Assistant, because there's so many more projects. And actually today, and I'm super excited about that, we are joined by people here in the studio. We have the founder of Z-Wave JS, Dominique Griesel. We have the founder, Koen Kanters from Zigbee to MQTT, Christian Sweeney from WLED, and Mike Hansen from Rhasspy.
And we have some really big news, right?
And we have some really big news.
We have some big news. Also, Paulus will be taking questions and recording questions. So if any time during this live stream you have questions to any of us or any subject you see during the live stream, just drop them in the chat and Paulus will pick them up and probably throw them around.
Definitely, yeah,
right?
For sure.
But first, you need to get started on the big announcement. So I'm going to send you to your desk and, well, let's get this party started.
Okay, so today I want to start with a little teaser. It's a symbol, something we've been working on for quite a while, something that we put a lot of effort in, something we're really proud of to talk about. But before I go into more detail, I want to first tell a little backstory. In 2013, I started Home Assistant. It was just some code to turn on my lights when the sun was setting. And I put it online, I shared it. Some people liked it, some more people liked it. Some people that liked it and started using it started contributing back. And Home Assistant started to slowly grow. We got the first bit of community was born. But slow, I think, was a good description of that time. That changed 3 years later when Pascal Vizzely introduced the Home Assistant operating system. All of a sudden, users could just install Home Assistant operating system on their Raspberry Pi and turn it into a smart home hub, like you would expect what to buy from a store. It used the user interface to onboard, to install updates, download backups. Everything was possible. Our community's growth started to accelerate. And with our growth of users, we also saw a big growth in contributors. But that's where we kind of ran into a wall because the people working on Home Assistant, we were doing this in our spare time. We were doing this before work, after work, our weekends, and we were running out of steam. We were showing symptoms of burnout. And so something had to change. So in 2018, on the 5th anniversary of Home Assistant, I wrote a blog post called Thinking Big. And in that blog post, we announced Nabukasa. Now, Nabukasa was a company that we started that would create a service on top of Home Assistant, not taking anything from Home Assistant behind the paywall. And this service for Home Assistant would allow users to integrate easily with voice assistants and to allow to access their instance remotely. And our vision for Home Assistant, we were doubling down on privacy and local control. A community, a platform for the people, a platform by the people. And the reason we were doubling down on our focus on local control and privacy is because at that time, big tech had entered the smart home market. They had entered the smart home market with platforms that lived in the cloud. They had proprietary APIs where devices could share your data to them, and you could only get access to your own data using their hardware and their software. And we felt that Home Assistant at that time already, we were the only ones offering an alternative where your data matters, where the user matters. And so that's also the reason why Nabu-Casa didn't take investors. Because any software that has investors eventually has to give an exit to those investors, either get acquired or go public. And if privacy is the number one importance, then giving an exit, creating value for shareholders, it's going to conflict. Nabu-Casa has been a tremendous success. Today, 33 people are working not just on Home Assistant, but on the broader ecosystem, full-time. And when I say broader ecosystem, is because we realized that when we were working on a Home Assistant, that if we want your communication to be private and local, then if we still have to talk to the cloud, to then talk to the thermostat in the same house, that's not good. That's not private. That's not local. So we coined our vision for the open home, for the smart home, called the Open Home. It was about privacy, choice, sustainability. And one of the first things we did with this broader focus is that we acquired ESPHome. ESPHome is an open source project that allows our users to create their own smart home devices. It does this by offering full choice. You can use any component, and all your data stays local. All your data is yours, and you can decide exactly what needs to happen with this. And in a way, for us, ESPHome is about freedom, because if a manufacturer is not making the devices that our community wants to see, we make it ourselves. And ESPHome devices are so easy to use that you don't have to just be able to make one yourself. Maybe you can buy one from a community member or follow a tutorial to get your own. And today at Nabu-Casa, we have 2 people working full-time on ESPHome. But that's not the only technologies we've built over this time. Last year, as part of Year of the Voice, we launched Piper, a neural network text-to-speech engine optimized to run performant on a Raspberry Pi 4. We created Wyoming, an open standard to allow to build modular privacy-focused voice assistants. BT Home is an open standard that we created to allow Bluetooth low energy data to share IoT data. And ESP Web Tools is a thing that allows projects like Testmoda and WLED to offer a web-based installer such that they can reach even a bigger audience. Now, as we were building these projects, and we built them with our community, they were just kind of sitting there. And of course, Nabu-Casa, we were not taking investors, but we were getting a little worried, like, what if companies want to buy one of these projects or invest in one and want the return on investment? And so we got together to brainstorm. And we were brainstorming, how can we create a bulwark against surveillance capitalism and corporate buyout? How can we make sure that the projects we've worked on so hard, that they don't become abandonware? And that's when this became this, the Open Home Foundation. The Open Home Foundation is a non-profit that fights for privacy, choice, and sustainability in the smart home, and for everyone that lives in one. It does this by creating open source technologies and open communication standards for the smart home. We've based the Open Home Foundation on the following idea. Your home should be a sanctuary. It should be somewhere where you can be yourself without worrying who is watching. A safe place, free from danger, where you can thrive without compromising your data or your independence. Now, I've mentioned the words privacy, choice, and sustainability already a couple of times, so I want to tell you a bit more about what we mean with that. First, privacy. Your data is yours, and that's it. If you buy a device with your money and you put that device in your house, you power that device on with electricity that you pay for, and then this device starts gathering information about your network, the room it's placed in, how you use that device, then whose data is that? That's yours. And you should be in control what happens to this. And if a manufacturer wants to process this data in this cloud to offer extended features, that's okay, but then they have to ask consent to do that. And not with some garbage terms of service, but actually be clear to the user what is going to happen with their data. The second thing is choice. Users should be able to mix and match which devices they want to put in their smart home. There's not a single manufacturer that is perfect for every single person. Every use case deserves should be allowing the user to pick the best device for their use case. And if you think about it, if you're going to buy a dining table, would you accept the fact that this dining table would only work with chairs from the same manufacturer? No, you want to be able to choose whatever you want to do with that. Now, this doesn't mean that every device needs to know about other devices. No, devices should have a local documented API, or preferably even use an open standard so they can be integrated in other systems. The third thing for us is sustainability. And for us, that is broken down in two things. We want the smart home to reduce waste, and we want to make sure that the energy consumed by our smart home is using as little energy generated by fossil fuels. The first thing, reducing waste, devices that we put in our smart home, they need to be made to last. Look at your phone. You probably replace it every 2, 3 years. Look at your computer. You probably replace it every 5 years. Well, if we're going to ask users to put like 20, 40, 60 devices in their smart home, they can be replacing that every 5 years. That's ridiculous. Nobody wants to do that. So no, devices need to last 10, maybe 20 years, and when they break down, they need to be repairable so they can last even longer. For the second part, the climate is changing, the world is heating up, and we need to be globally active to make sure we stay below 1.5 degrees. And it also means that our smart homes need to be smart about what kind of energy they use and when they use it. So we want to make sure that we provide tools to our users such that they can know what kind of energy is coming in, know what devices, how much energy they're using, and make sure that, for example, when they know solar energy is coming in, that's when they charge their bike, that's when they charge the car. And when gas-powered electricity is coming in or coal-powered, then let's turn off some devices. This is the kind of tooling and monitoring that we want to make available to users. Now, I've talked a lot about what the foundation is, but how does this actually impact all the work we've been doing until now? First up, our mainline projects, Home Assistant and ESPHome, are now owned by the ESPHome Foundation. Nobody can buy them anymore. They're owned by a non-profit bound to its mission. So if anyone was ever worried that I would sell Home Assistant or commercialize it, you don't have to worry anymore. That's no longer possible. But like I said before, we also created a lot of other technology over the years. And actually, when we started counting these things, we realized that, wow, we have over 200 different projects, libraries, drivers, and standards. And all of those are going to be put inside the ESPHome Foundation. And I want to specifically thank Russell Claren for donating Zigbee. I want to thank Ernst Klamer for donating BT Home. And I want to thank Mike Hansen for donating Piper and Wyoming. But not every project under the sun is part of the ESPHome Foundation, because we didn't build everything. We actually worked together with a lot of different projects. And a lot of these projects, they have their own community, they have their own maintainers, their own governance, their own leadership. 4 of these projects have decided to join the ESPHome Foundation as collaboration partners. These projects are Z-Wave JS, a driver for Z-Wave devices, Zigbee to MQTT, a driver for Zigbee devices, WLED, the best way to control LED light strips from a microcontroller, and Rhasspy, the open source voice toolkit. And already today, we are investing heavily in these projects. Dominique Griesel, the founder of Z-Wave JS, he has been full-time employed at Nabukasa now for 2 years. And he has no strings attached, just work on Z-Wave JS. Nabukasa doesn't own anything, just make it the best Z-Wave driver. And Mike Hansen, the founder of Rhasspy, he's also employed full-time by Nabukasa. And under that, he has been able to create a lot of very cool open source voice technology for the ESPHome. And WLED, they have benefited tremendously of our work with ESP Web Tools, which has made installing that a breeze. Now, over the years, since we started Home Assistant, there has been manufacturers that they have tried to pull a bait and switch on our community. They would sell us devices that had local APIs. They sell us devices that kept our data local. And there have been manufacturers that then try to push a firmware update to actually reverse that, to push our data to the cloud or remove local APIs. And whenever those things happened, we would create blog posts and we would fight for our community. We would make our voice heard. We wouldn't just create blog posts, we would also talk to the press and just kept talking about it. And more often than not, we saw that these manufacturers, they would reverse their decision. And this gave us a taste of power. It's like, wow, when we organize, when we get together, people listen. we can make change for the better. And so it's our ambition for the Open Home Foundation to do more of this. We want to inform the public, but also public servants about the importance of privacy, choice, and sustainability for the smart home. Ideally, we would get laws passed such that when a manufacturer wants to introduce devices into our market, they need to respect the user. Now, the Open Home Foundation is a non-profit, which means it cannot participate in commercial activity. And that's why the Open Home Foundation will have commercial partnerships, and Nabu-Casa will be the first commercial partner. Nabu-Casa will continue to offer Home Assistant Cloud, the best way to remotely access your instance and integrate with voice assistants. And it will offer all the hardware that we love today, like the Home Assistant Green, the Yellow, and the Sky Connect. And the revenue that Nabu-Casa generates from all these activities, they go back into the Open Home, either by employees working on the projects or on the collaborators or in kind to the foundation. But we don't just want to rely on partners. We also want to rely on you, the user. And so if you have a project that you like within the Open Home, it doesn't just have to be our foundation, it can be collaboration partners. Look at how they are organized. Look at who the maintainers are. Can you help fund them? Can you otherwise see if you can help the project? See how new users join and start the project, see where they struggle. Maybe we can find a solution to make the Open Home more accessible to everyone. Or maybe you can report your bugs, or even better, help solve the bugs or user experience problems. Now, I want to finish my presentation with a photo. This is a photo of a thermostat, 30, maybe 40 years old, so old, the plastic is discolored. But it still works. It has a sensor, it measures the temperature in the room, and when the temperature is below the target temperature set by the user, it will turn on the furnace through an open standard. And that sensor data, it stays on the device. It's not shared back to the manufacturer. Somehow, when we were making our homes smart homes, when we were working on installing smart devices in our houses, we kind of lost this idea of privacy. But it used to be very normal. Every technology was based on an open standard, and somehow we're not doing this anymore. With the Open Home Foundation, we want to fight for this. We want to make sure that the smart home of the future respects the user again. So yeah, that is the Open Home Foundation. It's going to be a living project. We're going to work on it in the open, just like we do with our technology. It's a little idealistic, it's a little radical, and it's our attempt at creating a lasting legacy. And I think it's going to be a pretty big deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulus. That indeed is a pretty big deal. I'm looking forward to that. Welcome back. I'm now joined by the 4 new collaborating projects for the newly founded Open Home Foundation. First of all, I'm here joined by Christian of WLED. Christian, do you quickly want to tell what WLED is and why did you join the foundation as a collaborator?
Thank you, Frank. I'm Christian, 25, also known as AirCookie Online, and I'm the founder and maintainer of the project WLED, which I brought to life in 2016. And WLED is a program for controlling full-color, individually addressable LEDs. For the Espressif microcontroller series, and our aim is to make it easy to use and have like the best lighting patterns possible. And we have over 100 effects. And
those are those little ESP chips, right? You can flash. And you're using the ESP web tools from the Open Home Foundation.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what is next for WLED? Do you have like a little peek into what's coming?
Well, to be honest, WLED is already quite feature mature. For example, segments, presets, most of the core features are already there. So it's basically just continuous improvement, polishing and improving stability. But some things I personally really look forward to is improving the settings UI, which I originally wrote in 2016 and well, it needs a bit of polishing. And also, like in my bachelor thesis, I wrote like a little demo for a custom lighting effect system where you can write your own lighting effects and it gets applied immediately without having to like recompile and re-upload the entire firmware again. And I'm also looking forward to bringing that and making it fully available soon.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So something that's upcoming and pretty hard and what General talked about is Matter. Are there any plans for Matter support in WLED?
Well, at the moment, I can't promise it. I would really love to support Matter because it's like the first open and fully local standard that is supported by the big voice assistant players. So it would be really great to integrate it. One like sticking point with that is Bluetooth because that increases the binary size on the ESP platform by quite a lot, and that makes it a bit difficult to integrate. So I can't yet promise it, but I would really love to add it to WLED.
Oh, it would be cool. Looking forward to that one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, another person on the table today, Mike. Hi, Mike from Rhasspy.
Hey.
Mike, do you want to quickly explain what Rhasspy is about and why did you join in the ESPHome Foundation collaboration?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Mike Hansen, creator of Rhasspy. And so this is an open source voice assistant toolkit. So kind of a build your own voice assistant and using a lot of open source tools and a web UI that I also wrote a long time ago that could use some updates for sure. And so I'm collaborating now here with the ESPHome Foundation because the open source voice space, as anyone who's been in it for a while knows, it's very fractured and very tied to the ups and downs of commercial interests. So there have been a number of platforms that have been, joined the community, gotten makers and everybody involved, everybody excited, had awesome technology. Then they got acquired, and it all, went to hell. And so this cycle over and over, I think, has made a lot of people burned out on open source voice, and it's just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Whenever something cool comes out. So I'm hoping that this will serve as kind of a beacon for open source voice enthusiasts to come collaborate with us. This is for the long term. This isn't tied to a particular commercial interest. So yeah, we'd love to have you collaborate.
I hear a common theme, by the way, and just needing help with UI and collaboration there.
Yeah, web UI is not my favorite part of.
Yeah, this is for programmers in general, right?
Well, yes.
So by going open source, are there any trade-offs you've made for doing voice?
Yes. So the technology for sure changes. I mean, once you leave the closed source arena, you leave a lot of the very high-end, powerful algorithms that companies keep secret because it makes them money, right? And I understand they don't want to just give those away. So what we're hoping is by building completely in the open, we're going to attract, if we get big enough, we could attract enough people with the knowledge who can help implement open algorithms for us and make it better so that we can actually compete with these, the big boys, as they say.
Big boys, yeah. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
What is different from Christian? You are working, you're a colleague of me, right?
Yes.
You're working for Noble Casa full time. And how did that change the way you run the Rhasspy project and voice?
I mean, so it's made it so obviously my focus more has been on integration with Home Assistant.
Yeah.
But interestingly, that's made it so I reach more people. There are still aspects of Rhasspy that I think can meaningfully live outside or maybe for more specific use cases. Mm-hmm. But it's really, the Home Assistant community is unique. It's incredible and awesome people, and it's been really great to kind of, be the ambassador to bring voice into that. And I think
voice, right?
Yeah. And I think it's gonna benefit everybody ultimately.
I hope so. And that's what we aim for with the foundation as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to quickly go to Dominic here from Z-Wave JS. Welcome, Dominic. Do you also want to quickly introduce your project and tell us why you joined the ESPHome Foundation?
So Z-Wave JS is I call it driver to control Z-Wave devices. It started out as, like many projects here, as a hobby project and has since grown to be the most advanced Z-Wave open source Z-Wave driver out there. I'm joining the ESPHome Foundation because back then when I started, it was just me, and I noticed when I found issues in devices, it was really hard to get manufacturers to listen. And that changed a lot at the point Home Assistant picked up Z-Wave JS. I really noticed the difference. They started collaborating more. And I think the ESPHome Foundation is a good next step into that direction, being part of a bigger voice that has the possibility to make a change.
Resonate through manufacturers as one voice together.
I also think that's a really important point. The ESPHome Foundation, we really want to fight back against like companies who have run all their services via proprietary servers and can turn them off at any moment, bricking devices. And with if you run everything locally, you can be absolutely sure that it will stay working. And if it doesn't, then you can always fix it because it's in your control and it protects your privacy. And we think this is really important. So we want to protect that.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So Z-Wave JS is in the process of becoming like fully certified. What does that actually mean for the project and for what we do?
A couple of things actually. So certification in Z-Wave is coupled with very thorough testing. And since we are writing a controller application that has to deal with devices from 20 years ago up to modern devices, there are a lot of edge cases to consider. And this certification on one hand makes sure that we check all the boxes, that we consider all these edge cases, and that we work correctly per the specifications that are that describe how a Z-Wave device should work. Second part is primarily marketing, I would say, because certified devices or implementations are allowed to put the Z-Wave logo on their boxes and advertise with it. The third part is the one I'm most looking forward to, is because historically I've gotten a lot of pushback from manufacturers, especially in the further past, who said, no, this can't be, our devices are certified, the mistake must be on your side. And once we are certified, this is no longer an excuse.
Right, you can actually verify if a device should work, yes or no. That's cool. Thank you. Well, we have another guest at the table. Hi, Koen is here from Zigbee to MQTT. Koen, can you quickly tell me what your project is about and why did you join?
Definitely. Thanks for having me. So I'm the founder and maintainer of Zigbee to MQTT. It's a project I started in 2017 because at that time I bought some Xiaomi devices on AliExpress, and there was not a really nice way to connect them. And I thought there must be something like this be existing in the open source world, right? Because you can find everything there. But this was not really there. So I thought then, let's just make it myself. So it really started as a hobby project. And it actually still is. Now, one of the repositories has more than 2,000 contributors to it. So that's became quite a big project.
It grew quite big.
Yeah, it grew quite big.
Did it all start as a hobby project for you too? Like I recognize myself in this one.
There are quite a lot of parallels. Like I started a year earlier than you, but still it's a hobby project, and I built it because there wasn't a good open source lighting solution available, and I wanted to build it. So
this is why this stuff all exists, right? Because hey, this should be here. It's not. I'll make it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And then people start to join. So that's actually
maybe it's also the same for you. But when I started, I had no clue what Zigbee actually was. I found it all out along the way. I'm not a Zigbee expert at all, actually. So I just started playing around with it, and then I learned it. So it's fun. And even some time back, I looked on Amazon for some bulbs, and even some of them have the Zigbee to MQTT logo printed on the box, which is really crazy because it's just a hobby project, which I like to work on.
And people use it to commercialize now. That's
apparently.
So Zigbee to MQTT is large. It's one of the largest Zigbee projects in the world, maybe the largest even, actually, I should say. But it's not just Home Assistant that is using it.
No.
How do you feel about that? How is that for you?
Yeah, so that was actually the reason. It should not be directly tied to Home Assistant. You should be able to connect it from any home automation system, like Domotics, or also a lot of people use it in combination with Node-RED, or maybe their own Python script. So I think this is the power of Zigbee to MQTT.
Yeah, definitely. So What's in the future for Zigbee to MQTT?
Yeah, so still working on a lot of things. For example, recently there has been a complete rewrite of the Ember adapter. So, for example, the Sky Connect performance really improved because of this. There's some community members looking into Matter support, such that we can have Zigbee to Matter, similar as the U-Bridge does. So it would be really cool to have.
Oh, that's absolutely nice. Yeah. Well, thank you. I want to check with Paulus if there are any questions coming in through socials.
I have one question coming in here is for Mike. And Leon Kernan is asking, is Rhasspy still being updated? I thought he was working on Home Assistant itself now.
So there is a developer preview of the next version of Rhasspy, but I've taken lessons that I've learned from that actually to build some of the components I did over the year of voice, and I feel like now I could do a better job. So I'd like to come back and really put work into Rhasspy to differentiate it from what's in Home Assistant, because I think there's a strength there and a focus that could be done that makes it usefully different from the stuff that's in Home Assistant. Things like advanced user cases, people who want to have crazy, fallbacks for cloud services being turned off, all of this stuff versus the simplicity you would get when you use it in a Home Assistant.
Right.
So yes, it is being worked on, and I promise it will be updated at some point.
Yeah. Not just a question, but somebody is very happy, and I thought I wanted to know. Lawrence Kibler writes that I love how I have Z-Wave devices that are 23-year-old from Intermatic and GE that still work today with Z-Wave JS. And I think it's just very awesome to show that the power of open standards, right? This is the kind of stuff that we love to see.
Discolored at this point. Yep.
It's also important why these open source projects should exist, right? Because at some point maybe Matter takes over of Zigbee, but then people still have many Zigbee devices in their house, and they don't want to trash them, right? So they want to keep on using them.
That's the sustainability part of it.
Indeed, and probably the vendors are not going to provide it because they have these cloud costs.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and this is also something I could want to underline. It's the power of the community. If you have a cool project and you think some feature is missing, you can just contribute it back. So I think I speak for us all that we want to give a sincere thank you to all the contributors to our projects. Even if we are the maintainers, the projects wouldn't be where they are today without all our contributors. So I would like to give a sincere thank you.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. Anything else, Paulus?
Yeah, this is a praise for WLED. Christoph says, WLED was the first thing I put in my house, then ended up with Home Assistant, rabbit hole, laughing out loud.
Yeah.
Over 4,000 pixels, my house running WLED, it's the best.
4,000 pixels.
That's awesome. Yeah. You're welcome.
It's a gateway drug, right?
It truly is.
The effects are so cool, by the way.
One, I guess the last question from Alex Ruffle. This one is for Koen, maybe Frank. Will there ever be a Zigbee to MQTT option to integrate Home Assistant without MQTT?
You can take this question, right?
I would.
You already did it.
This is not public info. No, I've been, we've been talking about it quite a few times, and I've been playing with it. I do have a prototype somewhere. It would be nice if we could pick it up at some point.
Yeah.
There's definitely a wish, at least for my personal wish. This is my personal heart speaking. I use Zigbee to MQTT, so thank you for that. And I would love to see a more tighter, more native integration with that. And there are multiple Zigbee solutions out there, but my choice is Zigbee to MQTT. So maybe one day. Does that, I think?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, right. I guess that's it for this panel. So, going to say thank you all for joining this panel, and we'll be going back to Paulus, but right after we have looked at the winners of the voice contest we did recently.
Okay, Bender. Bürodecke aus. Okay, Bender. Bürodecke an.
So we can set up commands to change the color of the lights. So I have one like color scene for rainbow colors, and then to change the color bright scene to white, I have bright scene.
Okay, Nabu, how's the weather?
It's 67 degrees and cloudy.
So this pulls weather information from my weather station that's out on the patio.
Jarvis,
how can I help you?
turn on the light.
Turned on the lights.
Okay, those were the winners of the voice contest. We were super happy to see all the things the community was contributing. Those were amazing. So next up, we want to talk about actually some of the things we did instead of announcing new things, right? So we're going to have 3 different topics that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about voice, we're going to talk about Home Assistant, and we're going to talk about hardware that runs Home Assistant and that Home Assistant uses to connect to other devices. So first up, voice, Mike Hansen.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Mike Hansen, and as everyone with a PhD knows, I'm legally obligated to appear on camera looking like a professor. So I'm the voice guy from Nabu Casa. I'm here to talk to you about controlling Home Assistant in your own language. All right, so the Year of Voice. This was last year, and I was the lead hired by Nabu Casa to work on this. And like I said, this was about controlling Home Assistant in your own language, which for anybody who knows Home Assistant is a global phenomenon, right? So there are 60 plus languages that it's translated into, and this is a tall order, especially for a single year. It wasn't just me, I had people within Nabu Casa and the community helping, but still, that's a lot. We achieved quite a bit building the foundation, but we'll be continuing. And today I'm just gonna share kind of 3 pillars that I think were foundational that we built over the Year of Voice and that we'll continue to improve upon. This is hardware, community, and software, and I'm going to provide an example of each of these, but keep in mind these are not the only things that exist under these categories for voice, and it's certainly not going to be all that's there for the future. But voice is largely for us not just about being a part of the smart home, but about being a part of the open home. So voice has been part of the smart home for quite some time, but it's a bit of a different story when we take it to the open home. So when people ask me, okay, Mike, now that the Year of Voice is over, what are you going to do? I say, well, we're 1/10 of the way through the decade of voice now, right? And this is about voice and AI as part of the open home. We have our first baby steps with AI and Home Assistant that we've been working on. More to come on that. I have no new announcements there. But this is really about taking these open home foundation values of privacy, choice, and sustainability and kind of turning them up to 11. So I'm going to talk a little bit about here the first pillar, and that's hardware. I mean, everybody knows that in order to interact with voice, you usually purchase some kind of device that you talk to and that talks back to you, right? And today, if you go out and buy something from one of the big boys, you take it home, and let's say you don't like the software that runs on it. Too bad. You can return it, you can throw it in the trash, or you can just be banned. That's all you can do. And we think that's ridiculous, right? So what we've done is in the Year of Voice, thanks to the hard work of the ESPHome developers, we've added voice support to ESPHome, which is why I'm wearing this ESPHome pin. And we call ESPHome our open secret weapon because it's something that one of those things where you look at all these different devices that are so diverse. So you can see these pictures of things like HAL and Bender and even commercial products like the ESP32S3 Box 3, up the little blue-based one, and the cool robot, the one I can't remember the numbers for in Star Wars. But all of these different devices all running the same chips, right? These are all the Espressif ESP chips, and they're all running ESPHome. And a lot of them have different microphones, different speaker components. It doesn't really matter. You can build so many different variations, all thanks to the versatility of ESPHome. And so this is the building block for us for our hardware someday that we'll build and that other community members will build or perhaps other commercial interests. But the point is that you get to choose what runs on it and how it works. So this can run fully locally if you want. You can choose to use a cloud service like Home Assistant Cloud, but it's your choice, not the manufacturer's. Next up, I'm going to talk a little bit about Piper, but this is more about community, and I think this is one good example of it. So the open source text-to-speech space has been active for quite some time, but there's been kind of a division always where you have local models that sound robotic and they run okay, or they run great. Actually, they run like fast, but they sound okay. And then you have these higher end natural sounding models, usually neural network or machine learning based models, and they sound great, but they don't run on anything without a graphics card or some expensive piece of hardware. So I focused a year ago to build Piper, which is an open source text-to-speech system that runs, it's targeted at the Raspberry Pi 3.4 level of hardware. So this should run on most things that people are running with Home Assistant. And so I'm originally from Wyoming in the United States. I only speak English, and so I need a lot of help in porting Piper to all of these different languages. And the community here has been incredible. We now have voices for over 30 languages, hundreds of individual voices for these languages. And part of growing this voice community around the open home has been Nabukasa actually funding the creation of public domain voice datasets. So these are often in languages that are not typically seen in open source text-to-speech systems. So we've had recent recordings from Bulgarian, from Polish, from Hungarian, and others. And we will actually, in some cases, pay for people's studio time to go record data sets that we can put in the public domain. Now, this isn't just for our benefit. I train the Piper voices in my basement on my computers. Other people train them as well. But this is also for the future of open source text-to-speech. So other text-to-speech systems that come along, they can use these data sets freely. And I've seen this over and over in the academic literature. When there's an open public domain voice data set available, people will use it. And this is how you get under-resourced languages, I think, to be used more. In fact, I just recently, this past week, saw a project for Icelandic. A Piper model is trained to run on an Android phone as part of a 5-year project by the Icelandic government, and they chose to use Piper for this. So that's awesome. Another great example, I think, of the community aspect here is Piper has a feature that it can generate thousands of examples of multiple speakers saying a single phrase called a sample generator. And 2 projects to date have made use of this. We had contributors from the project Open Wakeword and another from a project called Micro Wakeword that built on top of this to train entirely on synthetic data created by Piper. So Open Wakeword, this is something you can actually go make your own Wakeword for your that runs in Home Assistant, and for your voice pipelines, you can train it in about an hour. And Micro Wakeword, a little bit harder to train, but still can be trained entirely on synthetic data. And these 2 kind of projects came in, built on top of Piper, and now we're hoping more people will come and build on top of them. So also, if you're interested in becoming one of these people who are going to contribute to a voice data set, please email me at voice@nabukasa.com. Okay, lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the software side of things. So the Wyoming protocol, like Piper, is being donated to the Open Home Foundation. The Wyoming protocol is a kind of the glue between voice services. So there are, in the open source voice community, there are a number of open standards to talk between voice services, but kind of lessons learned from building Rhasspy, I found that if these protocols build on top of something existing or are overly cumbersome, requiring a server or something, then that ends up being where people stumble all the time in installing them. So I decided to kind of boil the voice assistant protocol down to just its bare components, so it could run on a microcontroller, could run locally, remotely, whatever you wanted, and try to take out everything that I thought wasn't needed. And that's what Wyoming became. And I'm hoping that, as I said, this will serve as kind of a beacon for other contributors to come and to be able to produce new compatible voice services for Home Assistant or other projects. This isn't Home Assistant specific, but I do think having support in Home Assistant will help bring it up quite a bit in usage. And so Wyoming is this glue that goes between all of these different pieces of a voice assistant, from waking it up with your maybe custom wake word, to speaking your command and having it transcribed into text, having Home Assistant actually figure out what you want to do and doing it, and then having it speak back to you to say it did it or answer a question or something like that. Each of those pieces, whenever the voice services talk to each other, that's where Wyoming lives. And that's the reason why when you swap out different services, you don't necessarily need a dedicated integration for them. All right, I'm going to wrap things up here, but I want to say a big thank you, especially to the language leaders who helped during the Year of Voice and have continued to help translate common voice commands into all these different languages. Again, I'm only an English speaker, so and in fact, my degree is not in linguistics. I tell people I play a linguist on TV, which is what I'm doing now. And so these language leaders have been instrumental in helping me not only do the translations, but understand some of the complexities that occur in these different languages that don't happen in English. I say often that English is just bad enough to have been complicated for initial researchers in natural language processing in the United States, but there are languages that have far more complexities that I wish I understood deeper. I'd also like to thank the many people who have contributed their voice. So they've spent hours recording data sets, gone back and forth with me about microphone choices, all of this. And in most cases, they haven't received any kind of compensation. They've just been doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. I appreciate that. And definitely to all the community members who supported us during the Year of Voice and beyond. And of course, Nabucasa subscribers who helped support me doing this work full-time, which I love, and I hope to continue for decades to come. So I'm going to give you back to Paulus, and thank you again to everybody.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Mike. That was great to see how we are all like, how you've made voice accessible to everyone. Now, there's been a couple of questions, but I want to just tell the community this is really live, and we are really looking at all the questions. So please, if you have a question for any of the future talks, also just drop it in the chat. We are reading along. I think one of the first questions, it came from a user called I Can't Think of a Better Name. And he's wondering, when will he be able to use ESPHome to create a device that has a similar sensitivity recognition like Google Home, and it also looks good, that blends well in their house?
Well, so we have several community projects that are working towards this goal. Something that in the near term is the Anju Voice, which is taking out the guts of an existing Google Home, I believe, and putting in an ESP board, basically. I don't know that it reuses too much of the hardware, but some of it. So at least that's the looking good part. Now, the getting to the same level of performance as a Google Home or others like an Alexa, this is much more difficult. And this, to me, this is to the point of closed source versus an open source. So oftentimes it feels like in the open source, we're working with the scraps of what the closed source folks have gotten, because once some academic comes up with a great algorithm and it becomes useful, somebody pulls it in and shuts the doors for everybody else. So I think we have come quite a long ways, and we're looking into hardware and other software that will help us do better. But I think over time here, if we keep coalescing all of this, we will bring in people who understand those algorithms and can bring us up to that level.
Awesome. I have one more question here from Damixu. They're asking, so far there has not been any well-functioning voice recognition for Finnish language. What can be done for people to make this better?
So I would say, for voice recognition, this is different from the text-to-speech where it talks back to you. For text-to-speech, if we get more people recording the data sets. For voice recognition itself, there's a project that used to be run by Mozilla. Now it's run by, I think it's run by NVIDIA now, the Common Voice Project. So if you search for this, you can go there and they have a set of sentences for you to read. And what's important with those is the type of microphone you use doesn't matter. They actually want low quality samples because it's a challenge for the computer to learn how to recognize those. This is different from text-to-speech where you want high quality studio recordings. So anybody who speaks one of these languages like Finnish, if you go check out Common Voice, they will collect this data and they keep keep a running database that grows over time. And people like me, when I'm out there and I'm like, I want to train a Finnish speech-to-text model, I go to Common Voice first and see how big is the data set. And for a lot of languages, you see there's a couple hundred contributions, and that's usually not enough. But when something gets into the tens of thousands of contributions, then that becomes something that's very useful. One other avenue that people can use is to contribute their voice on LibriVox. So this is where you can go and read an audiobook and make it public domain. So you usually are reading public domain works, and you're making a public domain audiobook. And that data set from LibriVox has been a huge source of data for folks. Not a lot of Finnish recordings from what I've seen there. So these are two avenues I would say to check out.
Yeah, so if you're a Finnish speaker or if you speak a language that you feel should be better represented, these are the two things you can do to make it better. And then, of course, it's not just you. You would need to also tell your friends and family, right? Because speech-to-text is something really that you need many, like tens of thousands of different voices. So yeah, a big part of the community has to come together to record these things. But everything is possible.
Yep.
Okay, I have another interesting question from Lesec. Will it be possible to train the voice model so it reacts only to my particular voice or a few other people? So person recognition and not just voice recognition.
So there's two things. Having something tuned just to your voice, this is possible. I've done this. It's a bit difficult to set up the training environment, which is why it hasn't been easy to date. But this is something I would like to do. There's another aspect called speaker identification. So this is where the whole thing isn't tuned just to your voice, but it can at least identify you or differentiate you from the other speakers in your house. And we're very close to this. So I have a community member who's already contributed a model. So I think this is something where we could bake it in at maybe on the device level, maybe in the Home Assistant level, or you provide just a couple samples of your voice, and it can at least tell you apart from the other members of your house. And that, if it gets to be a high enough percentage recognition, I think would be very useful for, customizing your commands and stuff. Say, when my partner says this is what they mean. If I say the same thing, it might mean something different.
Right, your own calendar or these kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. So show me my calendar, and it opens up yours, not just the random one.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, these were the questions we're gonna go over today because we need to stick to our schedule as well. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you again. Okay, next up is our very own Frank, and he's going to talk about the state of Home Assistant.
Hi. Well, I've already introduced myself, but we'll do it again. I'm Franck Nijhof, and I'm the engineering lead at Nabucasa. But most of you probably better know me by my calling name, Frank, or maybe just as the guy that releases a new version of Home Assistant every month. That's fine too. So, the state of the open home cannot go without talking about the state of Home Assistant, right? Because, that's the piece that empowers most of our open smart home nowadays. So that's exactly what I'm going to talk to you about in the next couple of minutes. Home Assistant, the local voice first, privacy aware, and sustainable choice that is accessible for everyone. So let's get into it. The core values of today's announced Open Home Foundation are deeply rooted into Home Assistant. Privacy, choice, and sustainability is the foundation that the core of Home Assistant itself is actually built upon. Open source that puts local control and privacy first. I really want to reflect back today a little bit on how Home Assistant's development went since the last State of the Open Home we did back in, I believe, September 2022 it was. How we as a whole Home Assistant community have worked together in making Home Assistant like a better product and actually the home automation platform to go to. A platform that is private and the sustainable choice and a solution that offers you all the choice you could ever wish for. We've all been working hard in making Home Assistant available to everybody. We've had yearly themes like Share the Love, Making Things Easier, or streamlining experiences, just to put strength into the effort to make Home Assistant more accessible for everyone. And last year's Year of the Voice, which Mike just shown you, or Decade of the Voice, I should say now, I guess, is no exception to that, right? It added a new way to interface with Home Assistant, a new way to access your open smart home. But arguably the biggest difference and the biggest visual change we have seen in the past years would be our new logo. Our new logo is basically everywhere, right? You see it on YouTube, on Twitter, on social media, or sorry, Twitter doesn't exist anymore, I guess, but also on streams from other people, our creator network, our documentation, and the apps itself, our own apps. And the new logo is actually an iteration of our previous logo, right? The root, the antenna, or whatever people call it. I don't think we have an actual good name for it, Paulus, but the new tree actually shows the core value of the Open Home Foundation. Let me show you just how much. Each of the dots in the new Home Assistant antenna represents one of the core values of the Open Home Foundation. Privacy, choice, and sustainability are already there in the Home Assistant logo. And these ideals we are all chasing as a community together are very important, and they are very cool as well. But the question is, how are we actually doing? Well, one of the biggest tech-focused news outlets that's out there, The Verge, writes there are 5 major platforms. And right there, in the bottom, Home Assistant is listed, which is great. When I joined the Home Assistant project back in 2017, that's not something I could expect to happen. And I'm pretty sure that Paulus, who did his first commit back in 2013, had no idea and could ever dream about this happening. But also, please note how none of the other projects share the core values Home Assistant has, right? Local control and privacy first, that is not something we expect from the other ones. But let's go back to the first line here. What is major? And how major are we? Do we make a difference with our community? And with how many are we actually, right? Well, I can tell you we have recently reached a very super major milestone. Because based on our privacy-aware, opt-in only, and our public analytics information that we have, we know that there are at least 333,333 active installations of Home Assistant. And based on our download statistics, we estimate that around 30% of our users actually turn on these analytics. So, quick calculation. We have passed 1 million installations. That is just a lot to think about, right? Think about it for a minute. 1 million houses, 1 million households, 1 million smart homes, all powered by Home Assistant, not even to mention the number of people living all these homes that are using those smart homes. The total number of people daily engaging with Home Assistant in those 1 million households, that must be massive. But it's not just the number of installations that is very impressive in this case. According to GitHub's public information, during their State of the Octaverse of 2023, we are the second most active open source project in the world. Also, a big shout out to GitHub, because they provide us all the tools that makes the development of Home Assistant every day. We absolutely love you guys, it's amazing. But running a project like this size is not a small task either. This is, by the way, one of the biggest tasks we all have to fulfill at Nabu Casa. A lot of my time, actually most of my time, and also all the time of all my colleagues at Nabu Casa, goes into organizing everything around the project, handling all these contributions from our community. And I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely not complaining. I'm very, very thankful. I want to thank everybody for contributing, and please keep doing that. Because quite literally, all these contributions is what makes and builds Home Assistant. You guys build it. Isn't our community like the greatest ever? Talking about a community, everybody is different. We all prefer different ways of communicating with each other. So that's fine. We are on all communication channels you can think of. You can find us, for example, on Twitter, or, well, that's X nowadays, although I think it's still Twitter. And I guess most of you people are on Mastodon nowadays, so that's fine too. We're there as well. But most people also prefer Facebook nowadays, which is really great. We have an official Facebook group. There are 200,000 members in there already. So if you prefer Facebook, you can just go there. There's enough people to connect with. We have our Discord-powered community forum. So Discord community forums can be found on community.homeassistant.io. We have 225,000 users there still actively communicating there every single day, which is absolutely great. Reddit does really well. Our subreddit from Home Assistant has now over 300,000 members, which is stunning. And considering it being a Reddit subreddit, it's actually super friendly and it's amazing to be there. So that's a nice place and a nice option to go. But if you prefer a more like live and sync way of communicating with people, we got you covered too, because our Home Assistant Discord chat server actually has 125,000 users there. We are chatting every day and love to help you out. But just like managing this open source project and working on it and keeping everything in track with all the contributions, managing a community like this is also pretty intensive. So that's why we recently hired a community manager at Nabu Casa. She's called Missy. And Missy is on a mission. Missy is on a mission to make our community even better. So if you haven't seen her around yet, she will be around very soon and you will see her. Oh, thank you. Another way we are investing in our community is YouTube. We are investing in doing more live streams, just like this live stream we are doing now, but also other ones. We want to do more community-focused and themed live streams, more live streams that are aimed towards certain topics you might like. And we've already done a few this year, right? We've done the Matter live stream, in which we did quite a deep Matter dive. We did the Dashboard live stream, the Year of the Voices live streams are also great examples. But we're planning on doing more variety of subjects that you might interest. So if you haven't done yet, you might want to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when we go live, right? So you won't miss anything of that. While we are at it, I must be honest, this might be the most crazy production we have ever done until now, and there are many people involved. So I'm pretty sure everybody wants to see a thumbs up. And I didn't know you didn't press it yet. Okay, well, go ahead. I can wait. Just do it now. That's fine. Done? Yeah. We can continue. Let's go back into Home Assistant, because all this growth and numbers and stuff is really impressive, right? But why did we get at such a huge number? What did we do to make Home Assistant more accessible and loved by so many? And how did we achieve making Home Assistant the privacy-aware and sustainable choice that everybody is going for? There are a few reasons, and there are too many to go over them all, but I have a few I want to highlight. Standards. Having sustainable and privacy-aware local choices for devices available you can use in your smart home is absolutely necessary to build out this goal we have. And to achieve this, at Home Assistant, we invest a lot in these open source standards, or in these standards in general. We want to make sure that you get the best experience using these devices, these protocols and these devices in Home Assistant to give you the best local options and standards available. These protocols, just these four, give you access to a choice of thousands of devices all around the world. They are very easy to get by, and they are all local, privacy aware, and built to last. Just like the thermostat that was shown by Paulus recently that discolored, devices that using these technologies will keep working until they literally break down in your home, not because some cloud is turned off. We think these are so important that, in fact, besides our community, we have actually 6 people at Nabu Casa working full-time on these standards, on implementing these standards, ensuring we have the best integration that we have in Home Assistant itself. We've also joined alliances, right? And like Z-Wave and the CSA Alliance for Matter. And we are working on getting those certified as well. If you are interested in more of these standards, we'll have a little discussion going on later. So keep watching and we'll dive into that later this broadcast. But just supporting these standards is not the only thing that got us here. It's the user experience as well. For years, we have been making Home Assistant more user-friendly. It has been one of the biggest goals we've had last few years. Actually, usable for everyone by improving our user interface and user experience and how things work and how you're guided and moving everything into the UI. And at Nabukasa, we actually invested in building a product and design team. We now have a product and design department that actually helps us with the task of improving the UX experience. Because honestly, as a developer, we're not really good at it. We need help with that. So we're getting that help. And a great example of this can be found in the new thermostat controls and cards we have introduced last year. So a thermostat is actually one of the most complex devices we have in Home Assistant. It could be heating, it could be cooling, it could be both, it could be a range, it could be some dead band in the middle. You could maybe control it with some presets, maybe on mobile, maybe on desktop, your wall tablet. So there are many factors at play here. And doing this right has actually been pretty complex. So this new thermostat card is actually one of the examples where we have several times said we're not releasing this. This has been proposed for a few months over and a few releases over and over again until we made sure that this was exactly what it should be. So to help with that, we did user testing, like testing different kind of varieties with different users. We did market research on how do thermostats work, how do they look, how do different cards work, how do the dashboards of the people look, and how do they reflect the thermostats on there. Until we were sure it was the right thing, and after that, we dropped it. And well, the response was actually really great. So another big thing when we talk about accessibility is language. Because English, do you speak it? Well, as it turned out, many of us don't. So we want everyone in our home to appreciate and literally understands what Home Assistant is and how it works, right? Yes, I'm talking about the smart home approval factor here as well. But how your home works is something you have to build. You have to make sure it's accepted in your home. But how well it's understood, that is something we can help with. So looking at translations in Home Assistant, there are almost 5,000 contributors in our community that are actually actively translating Home Assistant. To give you an indication on how much that is, there are 34,000 sentences in Home Assistant to be translated, having over 130,000 words. And with having over 60 languages we support at this point, the quick math is that we have over 8 million translated words in our system, which is absolutely a mind-blowing and staggering number. And that's not even all. We also had like the Year of the Voice recently, right? That can now understand you in over 50 different languages. And all these languages have been provided by the community. And they all have been managed and worked out by our language leaders for the Year of the Voice, which is also a great number. But the most notable collaboration between all these translations and our user experience, besides Year of the Voice and all the great stuff we did there, is the automation editor. The whole automation editor, including all possible actions and services that Home Assistant has to offer, are now translatable. And this was not a small task, not for development, but most certainly not for the translation team. Our translations grew over 30% in size just because we did this. But because of that, everybody can now read and understand how automations work easier. But this is also where our UX department jumped in. Product and design actually jumped in to redesign the way how you add your actions into Home Assistant, into your automations. It's now easier than ever to find that specific action you want and need and know what it does because there's a description underneath it. This is a cool way how different kind of work came together in making automations easier than ever. So Home Assistant is powered by a community, right? All these community contributions are great, and we love handling them and adding them, and there's great inspiration in there as well. But sometimes you, as our community, want features that are simply not being able to be fulfilled by a single user or just a few contributors. Some of these feature requests are really big. So this is where Nabukasa comes in. Your subscription to Home Assistant Cloud by Nabukasa is actually funding the development of Home Assistant, right? Nabukasa invests its profit into people, hiring people to work on projects like Home Assistant and the other Open Home projects. And this allows people like myself and many other developers to work on larger projects and larger things that could maybe not be picked up by a single contributor. So I want to go over some of these examples in recent history. The network storage feature. This was a big requested feature. Do you have one of those network storage switches in your home? Like they're called a NAS, a network attached storage, like a Netgear or a QNAP or a Synology NAS or something like that. One of the bigger requests here was, would be nice if we could actually access those files that I store in there and use them in Home Assistant. So we did. You can now add them and connect your NAS to your Home Assistant installation and, for example, use the media that's on it to display on your dashboard or send media off in your notifications or play them on media players and automations. You can also store backups on them. So your Home Assistant backup would back up on your NAS and, well, will be safely stored there in case there's something wrong with your Home Assistant hardware. You can always get back to it. But by far, the most requested feature we had in Home Assistant history, and it's like really the biggest one, is I want to be able to group my automations in the UI for organization. And we surely have heard you. We've been discussing this topic for years because this is not an easy task either. And at Nabukasa, we've all been hard at work to make the proper UI for it and the technique behind it. Heck, we even took it a few steps further. Not just automations. You can basically organize everything. And we didn't give you just like grouping for the automation UI. We gave you floors and areas to reflect your physical home, but we also give you categories and labels to organize the system the way you like and see fit. So to manage all this new UI of all these new features, we brought in a complete new UI for our data tables last release. So you can actually filter down and search and also group in this UI, so you can always find everything you need right away. You knew this one was coming, right? Drag and drop. This one has been requested since we introduced the Lovelace dashboard in 2019. Everybody has been crying about it and asking about it and begging about it, literally to have in our dashboard system since ever. It also has been attempted quite a few times by several contributors who have tried to implement drag and drop. And the truth is, just implementing a drag and drop system isn't that hard. What is hard, though, is making sure that the way you dragged and dropped it shows up the same way or in an expected way on every single device you have. That your desktop looks great, but your mobile as well, and it looks great on your wall tablet. And this was where the problem lied. So with the new drag and drop, we introduced a new dashboard type with sections. And sections ensure everything stays in the place where you expect it to be. Also, the tile card is very well prominent here on the dashboard. It got tons of new features this year just to accommodate all of this. So looking back at all what we achieved, right, since the last time of the Open Home and the big things we did recently and all what the community did, begs the question now, what to dream about next, right? We've shipped so many exciting, huge features that the question is, where are we going? But I'm looking forward to the future, by the way. I'm looking forward to what it holds. Because remember, this is an open source project. This is not something that I control. This project is largely created by you, right? Our community, our contributors. And from Nabukasa, how can we help? Well, we can help. We have plans. We can help to do things. But that's something I'm not going to talk about. That's something more for Madelena later on. So that's it for me today. The community has grown, has contributed a lot. We reached 1 million active installations, which is a huge milestone. We've focused on the making Home Assistant more accessible over the last few years, and we shipped amazing features. And I have not even hit the tip of the iceberg. Like, we ship around 1,500 to 2,000 changes each release. I'm now going off to do a little short Q&A with Paulus. But if you have any questions for me after the stream, feel free to reach out to me. I'm at Franck on most socials. And yeah, for now, thank you for your time.
Wow, Frank, that was great. Good to see just like how big Home Assistant actually is, right? Like 1 million installations.
A million.
A million.
A million.
I did not think that when I just like wrote some code to control my lights. Like, okay, so I've been collecting some questions. I'm gonna start with a small and light one. Brian McKay, he's asking, Frank, what has been the biggest challenge for core Home Assistant development since the last state of the Open Home?
Oh, I think the biggest change is just the ever-growing community. I think that is part of the takeaway of the presentation too. So I think like the number of contributions that come in, it's huge. Like I remember a few years back, we wanted to do a release and GitHub wouldn't allow us because there were too many contributions in that. That number we have surpassed way beyond, and that's almost becoming a regular thing now. So handling all these contributions, I think that is a big thing, and making sure the quality is okay and everything that's there, right? But also all the ideas that are there. The smart home keeps growing, and the things that you can do with it and potentially could do with it, something to explore and be aware of.
Yeah, I think you didn't mention it, but like the amount of contributions have been growing like a lot. We have been hitting twice a record this year, and I think was it the last release that we
last release was the all-time record? Yes.
Yeah, 1,600 contributions.
Just 1,600 merge contributions, core alone. That's not even including apps, documentation, front end, whatever not. It's just the back end. Yes.
And that's just a month, right? Like people, this is like
it's a crazy number.
It is a crazy.
It's a crazy number. Yeah.
Okay, I have another question from Petro. He's asking, Frank, are there plans to make re-authentication or integration changes better? For example, changing the IP or password for an integration.
Yeah, actually, we have already done that. So last release, we actually shipped a feature which we haven't announced because, well, we had quite a big release last release. But we did build a reconfiguration feature into a release now. So you can now actually reconfigure an integration. But the trick here is the integration needs to support it. So while we have built like the foundation for it, we have to wait until integration start implementing it. I think there are now 5 or 6 or so that can do that. But if you go to the integrations page, you click on the 3 little dots on integration, you will have the option to reconfigure it for some of the integrations now.
So that's just going to be another 2,000 contributions we have to review.
Yeah, I guess. For each integration one time, right? Yeah, probably. But it is en route, right? It has been addressed now. It takes a little bit of time.
It always does, right? I mean, I think this is the thing, right? We add something that integrations can use, and then every integration has to adopt it. And yeah, that takes time. But this is how we grow. And this is
we always iterate in the open.
Yeah.
Right? We ship features fast and then slowly build on top of them.
Yeah.
And keep iterating.
I have a question from Resin Cam, maybe, I don't know. Regarding YAML, with more and more integrations moving to the baseline and more investments in the user interface for automation, scripts and helpers, what is the future for the use of YAML in Home Assistant?
Oh, yeah, the famous old YAML discussion, right? Well, I truly believe, and I still strongly believe, that the UI is what made a lot of these things happen that we have seen, right? The growth of last years and all the features that we've got are thankfully, I think we have the UI to thank for. Nevertheless, I am a fan of YAML automations personally. I do love creating them, and we have no plans and never made plans to remove those parts. We want automations to be able to accessible in YAML in case you want to do really advanced ones. So yeah, I hope that will be around for a long time, in my personal opinion. But
I mean, we've set it in an ADR, so it's
it's an architecture discussion. This has been booked.
Yeah. Okay, final question from James Crook. How do you help keep your team and others from burning out on the project?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I think one of the biggest recipes we have here is that most of us are actually came into this as a contributor and as a hobby. And so we all love pretty much doing it. And I think that's already making things so much easier. You know what you're signing up for, basically, right? I knew what I was signing up for when I joined this.
Yeah.
And for me, personally, nothing changed. For me, it's still the same hobby project and do it with all the love that I did before, only, well, full time, basically, right?
Yeah.
And how we do it for all the other employees in the team. Yeah, we just talk a lot. We do fun things. We have our open social hours where we talk and drink a beer. We do a sports week at Nabokasa, for example. So these are things that all help. We try to connect in many different ways, and not always on Home Assistant level or on Nabokasa level even.
That was great. These are all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Up next, we are going to talk about hardware. Not just the hardware that Nabokasa sells, but all the hardware that we love to run Home Assistant on, and all the hardware that we use to make a Home Assistant connect to different IoT devices. Here's Uwe.
Good evening, people. Greetings from the Netherlands. My name is Uwe. I'm leading the hardware department at Nabokasa, and I want to speak about Home Assistant hardware, of course. And I want to speak about how Home Assistant hardware connects to the open home values. Now, I want to start my talk with going together with you through how people actually run Home Assistant. And I want to start with going with you through what type of installation people use. And as you can see on the slide I have here, roughly 3% of users use Home Assistant Core directly. Roughly 5% use Home Assistant Supervised. 16% use Home Assistant as a container. But the vast majority, more than 3/4 of users, use Home Assistant via Home Assistant OS, which is just great. It's great because it comes with a couple of advantages right out of the box. For instance, connectivity works way better. It's, in general, way more easy to handle. And for those users, as Frank already mentioned, we have an option to track how people use it. We have an option to track which hardware is used below Home Assistant OS. Of course, that's all opt-in, the way we do stuff. And we have a rough belief that roughly 1/3 of our users opt in for such statistics. Now, if we have a look into what boards are used for Home Assistant OS, you see roughly 1/3 of that is actually virtualized. Roughly 1/3 is a Raspberry Pi 3. Raspberry Pi 4, sorry, Raspberry Pi 3 is still around. You see Raspberry Pi 5 is already coming. But you see also those green and the yellow slides, which is our Home Assistant hardware, which is your Home Assistant yellow, which is your Home Assistant green. And it's roughly 6.3% of those users, which is overall 4.8%. Now, this raises 3 questions, at least for me. First one, and that's a personal one, is who of you actually cares about what I'm now telling? Is it 4.8% or is it a bit more than that? But on a more serious note, are we happy with those numbers? Do we want more? Do we want you to buy a green? Do we want you to buy a yellow? Do we want you to switch? And the last question is, what is the right setup for you? Now, the Open Home Foundation is built around 3 core values. We spoke about privacy, but the 2 values that I want to show up here are choice and sustainability. And choice and sustainability will tell you why we love to see virtualization, and it will tell you why we love to have you use your old hardware. We seriously do not aim for penetrating markets. We do not aim to becoming rich with the hardware we sell. If it works for you, choose whatever hardware you like. Don't create waste. Don't throw away the Raspberry Pi you still have around, and do not buy a yellow and throw away the Pi you have. Of course, with Home Assistant hardware, we create some income for Nabokasa. It funds the way we work. It's one way for you to support what we do. But Home Assistant hardware is here to offer choice. Home Assistant hardware is here to make choice easy. And of course, we strive for longevity and we strive for sustainability. Now, we created the Home Assistant Green in 2023. And the Home Assistant Green, here it is, was created to provide choice. People called it an easy choice, not only because of the price of just like $99 US. It was a choice specifically to less technical people, or for the people who would just want to save time setting things up. But it's also the device to start for people that are new to Home Assistant. It's a device that you could give to your parents, to your friends, to people who are less technical. Now, Raspberry Pi doesn't work for everybody. And surely, Proxmox virtualization is not a thing for everybody. Now, in 2022, before that, we created Home Assistant Yellow, centered around sustainability. It was meant to be extensible. It was meant to grow with you. It was meant to be created in a way that you start small, and at some point in time, you realize the RAM you have in there is not sufficient for me anymore. And then you do not buy a new device, you open it up, and then you add a new Compute Module 4 in there with a bit more RAM. If storage space is not sufficient, you don't buy a new device. You add or replace an NVMe SSD to it. So this was our way to handle sustainability. And of course, both devices run with very, very low power usage. That's our contribution to sustainability. But let me come back. It's your choice. We do not want to create waste. And we do not want you to create waste. The one thing that I would love to ask you is check for power consumption before you pull like the old laptop you have on the bottom right of my slides. Maybe it's not the best choice in the long run, but whatever. We hate vendor lock-in, and we surely wouldn't want to log in ourselves. We are open. Now, we have to limit our hardware support, because when we start supporting a certain board, we need to maintain what we started. Else, user experience will decline, of course. But we invest into the most common hardware choices, and we are really trying to make it work for you. Home Assistant OS is trying to make it as easy for you as possible, whichever choice you take. Home Assistant hardware is here to make it easy for you to pick it up, even in the first place, and to set your device up as easy as possible. Now, the Open Home Foundation also stands for the support of open communication standards. We spoke about those a bit already. Let me repeat that. It's Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave, Meta. We love them all. But the same principle applies here. It's your choice of standards, and it's your choice of hardware. If you have devices around, Zigbee devices around, why would you switch to anything else? Use those Zigbee devices, reuse them. If you have a controller around for Zigbee, use it. We're good. We believe in open standards because they perfectly align with all three ESPHome Foundation values. They are all about privacy because they're all local. They align perfectly with choice because there is no vendor lock-in. They align perfectly with sustainability because those are standards that won't go away. This is why Nabukasa, as a first commercial partner in the ESPHome Foundation, invests into officially certifying. And that's hardware and software. This is why Nabukasa invests into joining the corresponding alliances. We will dig deeper into those standards in a separate panel right after the Q&A session, after my talk. Now, we created the Home Assistant Sky Connect. And the Home Assistant Sky Connect provides Zigbee. And we are polishing user experience around thread to allow for matter over thread communication. We sold almost 100,000 Sky Connects. And the question I'm asking myself is, what makes a Sky Connect successful? And for you, it might be the question, why was the Sky Connect even created in the first place? The answer to that is user experience. Of course, right from the start, we invested into radio frequency performance, and we really invested time and effort into making it as great as possible. But we're still investing into it. We are still investing into continuous improvements through easy and super well integrated, easy, simple firmware updates. Now it makes sense to work on more connectivity sticks. And this is what we are on. There's not a choice against Zigbee. It's not a choice against Thread. It's a choice for providing additional choice. Now this leads to a full product line in connectivity sooner or later. And we will establish that product line under the name Home Assistant Connect. This means that the Home Assistant Sky Connect needs to rebrand. And the Home Assistant Sky Connect in the future will be called Home Assistant Connect ZBT1. Now, it's super important to note this is to allow for that product line of Connect sticks. It's important to say that the device is exactly the same. The only thing that will change on the device itself is a logo, nothing more. The Home Assistant Connect ZBT1 is not an update. It's not a successor. It's the same device. If you just bought a Home Assistant Sky Connect, don't be sad you didn't buy anything outdated. You bought the most recent device that's there. If you want to buy a Home Assistant Connect ZBT1 and the distributor of your choice doesn't have any of those available, take what they have. It's the same, really, seriously. Now, what's next? Next is a Z-Wave controller. We will release a Z-Wave controller later this year. And of course, this means we believe in Z-Wave for choice. And that again means it's not that we weighed it against Zigbee. We do not weigh it against Matter. All of these standards have their pros and cons. All of them are great. And of course, even later, there will be more connectivity sticks. And of course, we will also work on voice assistant hardware. And be it just to transition from what Mike said, from a year of the voice to a decade of the voice. And of course, there will be more hardware coming up later. But what I'm trying to give to you, the message that I want to send along to you is Home Assistant hardware is here to provide choice. You fund our work with buying Home Assistant hardware, but we do not want you to create additional waste and buying stuff that you do not need. And that's it for me. Many, many, many thanks. Please put all your questions into the chat, and I'm handing it over back to Paulus because I'm curious what questions there are.
Thank you so much, Uwe. That was a great inside breakdown of all the different ways people can run a Home Assistant, the options we have, the options we offer. There's a couple of questions came in.
That's great.
This one from Jaap, he's asking, and just to quote him directly, will the yellow get Raspberry Pi Compute Module 5 support?
That's an awesome question. We asked ourselves that question for multiple months, of course. The truth is, we do not finally know, but we believe it's very, very likely that it will work out of the box with a CM5. That's our current working hypothesis, and we believe there's good reasons to believe it will work.
That's great. There's another question here. Well, somebody asked, when can we expect voice hardware from Nabukasa? I had put it on the list, but that's just before you.
Later this year would be the answer. We are actively working on it. Actively.
Rice Eater 483 is asking, can we reliably use the Sky Connect as a thread border router now?
We're streamlining the user experience, and I guess it's not the hardware that's currently the big issue. It is all the software around it that makes a great user experience. And that's a thing that we need to work on.
Rumesh SLT is asking, is it possible to get support for NVIDIA Jetson Nano or NVIDIA GPU boards?
Not at this point.
No, and actually I can answer that one a bit more, as that we have been in touch with NVIDIA. And they have been, NVIDIA Nano is their, or Jetson is their platform to run AI in like, they have like small boards. They used to have a $150 one, but like I think their current range from $600 to $2,000. Not super accessible, but it is what is needed to run AI at home. And they've been working on making sure that the models that run on their platform are implemented using Wyoming and the Ollama API, so that you can run these AI models and integrate them into Home Assistant for either voice or some future AI stuff that we're going to be launching one day.
It's important to know that we're not talking about running Home Assistant on these things, right?
Yeah, no, this is not Home Assistant. This is really like a standalone box just for AI.
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
which is, by the way, also the way we want to see things, right? If you want to run AI, do not run it together with Home Assistant, run it separately, and then you can connect from one.
No, I mean, like, AI is just changing so fast right now. Everybody's talking, investing in chips. Like, it wouldn't make sense for us to release a board with AI, and then in 2 years, it's like, oh, yeah, sorry, this chip, we're doing different AI now, and this is not
which circles back to sustainability.
Right. And this is actually, the open standards are great, because even getting a Z-Wave chip dongle today, that will just keep working with all the Z-Wave chips that are out today, right? Like the standard. And most of these things are backwards compatible, so open standards just keep working. Okay, I have a question here from Matt Walter, who's asking, will you be making network-based Zigbee, Matter, and Z-Wave controllers or gateways?
Basically, I would argue the same, or answer the same way. Not now, not yet. Might be a thing that we will do in the future.
Yeah, it is a cool idea to just have like a, your Home Assistant hub is not in the best place, right? Usually for connectivity. So it's a good idea. I have a question here from Nils L. Will we get more powerful Home Assistant hardware with the x86 processor?
That's a very excellent question. We actually believe that the majority of Home Assistant installations, the green and the yellow, is just like good enough. There will be hardware that is more powerful to incorporate the more advanced use cases. It's not super high on our list at this point in time. There will be, at some point in time, something will be coming. Yes.
Yeah. Here's one question from Rumen Krastav. It's not per se hardware based, but more like operating system. Is there any chance for official support of Home Assistant for OpenWRT?
Ooh. I personally can't see that coming, to be frank and honest.
Yeah. No, I think these are the kind of things where like packaging Home Assistant is very hard. Getting Home Assistant to run on every platform,
it goes back to the thing, like if we start such a thing, then we have to support it. And we need to take wise choices in that regard. It's actually a pretty interesting idea, if you ask me.
Yeah. All right. These are all the questions I have. So much. Thank you so much, Uwe. That was a great presentation. And yeah, now it's time for the next segment, which is open standards.
And welcome back to another discussion panel, and this time it will be about open standards. I'm joined here by 4 persons again by Nick. Nick will be talking and representing Bluetooth. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you.
By Dominic is back at the table again as well for Z-Wave. Welcome. We have Nikita, and Nikita is here for Zigbee, also Z. So many Z's here.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Marcel.
En daar te zien.
For Matter.
Yeah.
Does it? Right? So we are going to talk about open standards. And the main question we're looking to answer and talk to about today is, should you go in on a single standard or maybe combine, or what should you do? I think this is one of the bigger questions all users are struggling with. But I want to start off because there's something on the table that interests us really much.
Dinner.
Like it looks like dinner, right?
Yeah, we have.
What did you bring, Nick?
We have a charcuterie board of Bluetooth devices and Bluetooth proxies. So you might have recognized these from the voice. These are the Atom Echoes. So maybe you've upgraded your voice to something better. There's been a lot of better options now available. So now you have this Echo sitting around. You could reflash it and turn it into a Bluetooth proxy. Just everything on the left side here of this board is an option to turn into a Bluetooth proxy. We added them over the last 2 years to Home Assistant. So if you don't want to use a local adapter, I know we had a couple questions just recently about networking adapters. So you can replace your local Bluetooth adapter with a Bluetooth proxy, which is based on ESPHome.
So maybe it's nice to explain for the people, what is a Bluetooth proxy and why do we need one actually? What does it do?
A lot of people will start out with, I'll get a Bluetooth device next to my Home Assistant, and suddenly I decided, well, I have my front door lock isn't really close to my Home Assistant. It's on the other side of the house. So I can grab one of these Bluetooth proxies. You've got, GLI Net 1, you've got the Olamix board here. This one's kind of raw, but very easy to flash. You've got even this tiny little Atom they're all Bluetooth proxies.
I like those, by the way. Those are pretty cheap. I believe they sell for 30 euros or something.
Yeah, there are a lot of great options. You've got Ethernet ones, you've got Wi-Fi ones. So you can put your Bluetooth proxy on the other side of your house, and if you're lucky, you have Ethernet over there. If not, you can use the Wi-Fi one. And then you can connect it to your Home Assistant it'll just show up as an ESPHome device. You don't have to do anything else but go into Discovery and just click it, turn it on, and then it's going to discover all your Bluetooth devices in range. And if there's a supported Home Assistant integration for it, you can start controlling your lock right away from Home Assistant on the other side of your house. So you don't have to have that local adapter right on your system. You can have 5 or 6 Bluetooth proxies all over the house.
So if you spread these all over your house, you're basically creating some kind of Bluetooth mesh-ish network. It's not fully Bluetooth mesh at that point, I would say.
So it's a very smart system. It'll figure out which adapter is closest to your device, and it'll connect through that adapter. So if you have 3 local adapters on your system and 3 Bluetooth proxies, whichever one has the best signal and best connection to the device, it'll just take care of it. So the more Bluetooth devices you have, you just keep adding proxies or keep adding local adapters until you can cover your whole house.
While we are on the subject of Bluetooth, it came up a couple of times. It's also donated a project that has been donated to the Open Home Foundation, which is BT Home. It came by a couple of times, and I believe that red one is one actually.
So if you go to the BT Home site, there's new devices all the time that use the BT Home standard. So this is a Shelly button, so you can press it, once, twice, 3 times. So, and your Bluetooth proxies or your local adapters are going to pick up that button press, and it's going to show up immediately in Discovery and Home Assistant, and you can use this right away. And it's speaking the ESPHome protocol over Bluetooth to your Home Assistant. So wherever you are in the house, if you've got 6 Bluetooth proxies in your house, you can walk around pressing your button all day long, and it's gonna pick up all those button presses all over your house.
What I find really cool about ESPHome is that ESPHome is a fully open standard, so you can build your own ESPHome devices, which is very interesting from a Bluetooth perspective, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a great option, especially ESPHome is really targeted at people who want to build something that is battery powered,
right?
Because it's you can last 2 years on the battery. Maybe you have a plant sensor you want to build. There's again, definitely check out the ESPHome website because there is a huge number of projects now using ESPHome to build their sensors. And anything that's battery powered, it is a fantastic application because you've got such a long battery life, and it's just constantly broadcasting whatever the sensor is picking up. And it's coming right into your Home Assistant. Discovery is all automatic. You really don't have to do anything besides turn the sensor on.
Right. That's absolutely, the Bluetooth is amazing for this long-term battery. But to be fair, Z-Wave does a pretty good job at that too, right?
That's true, yeah. Z-Wave is, compared to the other protocols, the only protocol that uses sub-gigahertz frequencies.
Right.
And that comes with a couple of changes, like on one hand, you have less interference with other devices. Maybe if you have a lot of Wi-Fi devices in your house or a lot of Zigbee devices, or your neighbors have them.
Or 200 Bluetooth.
Or Bluetooth, yeah. And you start to notice connectivity problems. Z-Wave can be one option to avoid all of those because it's on an entirely different frequency.
Right, because compared to other standards right here on the table, I think you all share the same frequency, right? Bluetooth.
Yeah, lots digesting of it all.
Digesting it all, right? And Z-Wave is, well, on its own there on sub gigahertz. But a lot of people actually maybe even think that Z-Wave is a little bit dead. How do you see that?
I guess you could think that if you look at what's coming out, what happens in the Z-Wave world. There was a bit. There were 2 new Z-Wave series in the last years that came out. Most recently, the 800 series. And very recently, Z-Wave Long Range. So there is quite a bit of development. And since we are Z-Wave Alliance members now, I notice firsthand what's going on. But I think what users often don't realize how big Z-Wave is in the industrial sector. So maybe the consumer side is a bit dying down, at least in Europe, we could say. I think in US it's pretty big still. But there's a lot of Z-Wave in the industrial space, like building automation, or many even don't know that Ring is using Z-Wave under the hood. They just don't put the label on their box.
Ring is a pretty...
It's consumer of Z-Wave. Yeah, that's definitely true. So in general speaking, I find Z-Wave devices very expensive, and I'm looking at Zigbee there. Hi, Nikita. Like, those are generally really cheap. How is that? Like, why? And why should I then like cheap devices?
So the Zigbee standard at this point is, I think, nearly 20 years old. And over time, there are 5, 6 chip manufacturers, many firmwares for the chips. The processes have been around for many companies to be involved in making devices. Costs just go down over time. And it's a natural progression with standards. Marcel, I think for Matter devices specifically, they started off as being quite pricey compared to Zigbee plugs and bulbs, but now they've gone down in price once people are retargeting what they're doing.
Yeah, once you get a few devices and some other company's going to build on top of that foundation, and there's going to be like price competition.
Right, but Z-Wave has been around for a long time.
Yeah, but they do not have a lot
Why is Z-Wave then in general a little bit more expensive?
I guess there are 2 parts to it. First is we don't have that competition. It was one manufacturer for the chips. We're just starting to get a second one, but as far as I've heard, they are not going to cut each other or going to do price competition on that side. there's one stack, which is a good thing because there's only one stack to support. But the most important thing, I think, is certification, and that's pretty intensive for Z-Wave. We've talked about it earlier. All devices with the Z-Wave logo that come out and undergo rigorous testing. Part of it is automated, but a lot of the testing is a manual process where people go through every interaction there could be and test if it works like the specifications say. And that has to be paid for, and that money has to be
right. So Z-Wave devices are more expensive, but they are all tested against like the certification there. But that is most certainly not the case, I would say, for Zigbee, right?
No, Zigbee is a bit more of a Wild West area. There's a core specification for base functionality. Things turn on and off. You can set the color of something or the brightness. But once things deviate from that specification, for example, more esoteric devices that do something a little bit strange, it's up to the manufacturer to decide how that's implemented, and it's never really rolled back into the specification in a future release, unlike how I think you said Z-Wave performs this.
Yeah, the way I've seen it is, at least in the latest specifications, you can't even use these proprietary technologies anymore. You have to use what's available, and if it's missing, you have to go to the Z-Wave Alliance and work with them to get it added to the specification before using it. So.
I want to go back a little bit to the sub-gigahertz part, right? That's giving Z-Wave more range then, I guess? Or better wall penetration, I guess?
Compared to the 2.4 gigahertz range, the sub-gigahertz has lower absorbance, so at least physically you can reach a bit further. And since there's less competition on the radio, at least in Europe, you can go even higher transmit power. So in the US, you have to have a pretty low value, but EU is a lot higher. So in EU, you can reach, at least theoretically, much further. And with Z-Wave long range, that's going to be increased even further.
That's coming soon.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big change, right?
What's the range on long range for Z-Wave? Like on the spec, right?
The spec or the advertisement is like over 1 mile.
That's quite long.
Yeah. And I did some testing in suboptimal environment, like through buildings, around buildings, from inside to outside, and I got 250 meters. So I was pretty impressed with that.
So for Bluetooth, we have the Bluetooth proxies. You can scatter all of your place and get like good, decent range across the house. How does that work for example, Z-Wave and Zigbee? Does it matter where I put my stick, basically?
Oh, very much so. There are specifically places you should not plug the stick into, namely
somebody
USB.
nodding on the other side. Yeah,
Marcel specifically. Nowhere near 2.4 gigahertz interference sources, which seems sensible, but they come from unexpected places. USB 3.0 ports, anything that is connected into one and speaking USB 3.0 is creating significant amounts of interference. We have a technical video of this out where even moving a device within inches of the cable is enough to completely break communication with it.
This is on the Home Assistant YouTube channel.
Yes, right? Video. It's really
That's really good. And it's really impressive.
Yeah.
It's just moving it a little bit, make it just
and
functional.
So what should you do? Just extend, like have a long cable, or is that going to interfere as well? Or
the quality of the cable matters a little bit, but just moving it away from interference sources. Solid state drives are big ones. Mesh system for Wi-Fi networks, even Wi-Fi routers specifically. While it may be convenient to put your networking hardware all in one spot, once you put it all in one spot, things that are wireless kind of degrade. And if they're all sharing the same frequency spectrum, like 2.4 gigahertz, they run into serious issues. Z-Wave solves a lot of these problems by
but not all of them.
knocking down the frequency. Yeah.
You should still not put it into USB ports or at the back of your server rack, for example.
It's actually so weird. So you have a USB stick for Z-Wave or Zigbee. Don't put it in your USB port, but use an extension.
So counterintuitive.
And not in your server rack.
Same thing with the Bluetooth stuff. Keep your Bluetooth adapter away or use a proxy. It's every one of these standards, we always have a problem with
interference
with USB ports.
There's a reason we ship the Sky Connect with a USB cable, and it's so you use it. Not all sticks come with one, but if you have one that doesn't come with one, get one.
Get an extension cable.
You won't regret it. Even if even if things work now, it'll only make it better.
It will make the mesh better, I guess, by just doing that. Yeah. So we talked about Bluetooth, Z-Wave, and Zigbee now, but there's a new kid on the block.
Yeah, it's a new kid. Yes,
Not
Matter.
just Marcel, but Matter too.
Yeah. What do you want to know?
No, well, thinking about Matter, like what does Matter do differently than others? Like what did it learn? Because it's new, right? It could look at all of this.
It's new, but it's like based on the others, right? Because in essence, it's the same as Z-Wave and Zigbee. It's a protocol to talk to the smart home device. But I think it's learned a lesson from the other protocols. That's how I want to see it. For example, one of the biggest benefits of Matter is that a device can have multiple admins. That's a technical term, but I can add this device to my Apple Home and my Google Home and my Samsung Home and my Home Assistant Home at the same time, and they can control this device securely at the same time. And I think that's a big game changer, especially if you're new in the smart home market and you have like your Apple Home app opened, join a few devices, and then you say, okay, this is not enough for me. I want to explore more options. Then you can just switch to Home Assistant without having to migrate or whatever. It just works on both platforms. I think that's one.
That's definitely
and it's a bit technical, but one of the other very important changes is like they separated the communication layer from the transport. And while that is technical, it's really a big benefit because the devices, they all talk a language with each other, and they do it over IP. And so you can replace the underlayer, you can replace it with a radio transport like Thread, which is like a variation of Zigbee, so to call, but like Zigbee on steroids, I want to call it sometimes. But maybe in 2 years from now, we have like a sub-gigahertz version of the radio transport.
So the current Matter, it's like because of this separation, can either communicate in a stick kind of network they have, right? Like Z-Wave have for Thread in this case, and it could also use Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, yeah, and that's also a big game changer.
And Ethernet too.
And Ethernet too, yeah.
It just comes by default.
Yeah, so you can have a Matter device connected to an Ethernet port talking to a Thread base, which is a radio protocol somewhere else in your house, and will just communicate to each other, and that's a game changer.
So Matter is still pretty new on the market, right? And one of the most asked questions I see around is, when will it support energy monitoring?
That's a trick question.
Yeah. Is it?
Well, Matter is like the new kid on the block, and the problem with Matter is it has a lot of marketing hype, right? But in fact, it's just getting started. So only the basics are implemented. So Zigbee is 10 years old already. Z-Wave, 20 years old.
20, 25.
So some people make the mistake is the big word, but want to compare it to an existing standard. Like, I have a smart plug and it should do energy measurement. And in Matter, if you buy the same plug now in Matter, it can only be on and off. Because it's the standard implementation, and the energy measurement will come later. Yeah, it's an iteration process, but it will be there this year.
Hopefully.
It has just been released, yeah.
Okay, no, that looks good.
Yeah.
Are there more standards landing in Matter then? Right, because energy monitoring is not.
Well, I don't think like a power plug, there's nothing fancy about like an energy plug or a light bulb. We have really good implementations in Wi-Fi, in Zigbee. I think the most game-changing things that are going to happen is new appliances like that we do not know on Z-Wave or Zigbee. For example, a fridge. A fridge is new to Matter, and it's Matter only. And a vacuum cleaner, finally, a local protocol for vacuum cleaners that are not tied to the cloud. But what I personally have the highest hopes for is camera support.
Oh, yes.
Like finally camera support, because almost every week you see a video leaked, like some company having troubles with their cameras, feeds dropping somewhere or leaking somewhere on the cloud. So if we finally have a protocol that's fully local, that we can control how to watch our cameras, how to record our cameras, that will be a game changer. So
100%. Yes.
I'm waiting for that one. That's
That
going
is
to be
something
awesome.
I don't see ever supported by the other three on the table here. So that would definitely.
Yes, because those are low bandwidth.
Yes.
And Matter is high bandwidth when
Can
you
go
use
high, yeah.
Ethernet or Wi-Fi. So
Oh yeah, definitely. Very good indeed. So, is there any reason which I should choose? Should I just now ditch all my Zigbee and Z-Wave devices
I think we all
and buy Matter
discussed it
replacement,
already,
right?
Like, yeah, even if you ditch your perfectly working Zigbee light bulb, it will go back in functionality if you buy the same one in Matter.
True.
So I think if you already have a Zigbee light bulb or a relay on Zigbee or Z-Wave or whatever, it should keep working. And you just pick the choice, like, I'm going to buy a fridge. And the fridge will not have Z-Wave support, but Matter. So you can have Matter and Z-Wave. It will work perfectly fine. I think that's the choice.
I think it's important to choose something for your use case.
Yeah.
So like, for example, I have a room in my house that has a lot of 2.4 gigahertz interference. So it's the only room I'm using Z-Wave in. So I can't use anything that's Bluetooth or Zigbee because it's just not going to work. But Z-Wave works great there. So
all these devices hooked up.
It's my test room.
Yeah, or if you want to reach the shed at the end of your garden, you're not going to do that with Bluetooth, for example. But Z-Wave is really good for it, and
Right.
with long range especially.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. If you have like your garden or whatever.
Right. Or a
That's
mailbox sensor or something.
Yeah.
I actually have a cable run outside in the ground so I can put my Bluetooth proxy.
So that's a good question. Actually, are you like fully running Bluetooth at your home?
I have outside. I actually have three outdoor boxes with Bluetooth proxies in them.
Right, but do you run any of the others? Like Matter or?
So I have Matter devices. I have Z-Wave devices. I have Zigbee. I have all of them. So yeah.
Right. And you, Dominic?
I think the only thing missing is Matter at this point.
Matter.
Yeah.
Well, that's still very new. You should talk to Marcel once.
Yeah.
We'll hook you up with some devices. Nikita?
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah, me as well. All of them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So I guess the conclusion is, doesn't matter. You can use them all.
Yeah.
And use whatever fits, right? I think that's the best way to look at it. I want to go back to Paulus and talk, see if there are any questions, by the way. Do you have any questions?
No questions. People were like, open standards, they get it.
Good,
It was
right?
perfect.
It gives you a lot of choice, by the way. Like just these standards, there's thousands of devices you can buy. All local, privacy aware.
Just look for any of those of these logos, and you're done.
100%.
So now I have a couple of questions. I think. So Andy Sawyer, he's asking, how practical is it to run all standards on, for example, a Home Assistant Blue?
Do it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, using the Blue all the time, right? With all these protocols.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. Like Home Assistant is built to handle like many, even way beyond these, right? At the same time.
I have another question. This one is for Nick from Jordan Rees. Do we still need a local Bluetooth adapter to set up a Bluetooth proxy?
Absolutely not. I have two of my big setups. I have one that has a couple local adapters and has 3 or 4 proxies, and the other setup is all proxies. The proxies are, if you're running Ethernet-based proxies, they're actually a little bit faster than the local adapters in most cases.
Wow, that's just wow.
Do you actually recommend like the adapter or these boards or a combination of those?
So I would generally recommend picking up these guys, the Olnex PoE board. This is definitely it's the easiest one to flash, and it's really fast. And it's Ethernet, so when you pick a Ethernet board over one that's using Wi-Fi, you're not having to share the radio time.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the downsides about a Wi-Fi based proxy is it's half of the time it's doing Bluetooth, half the time it's doing Wi-Fi. So the radio is shared. So if you have an Ethernet one, you're doing Bluetooth the whole time. So, but that's absolutely my favorite board for just ease of use.
Yeah.
And
Not for looks.
Not for looks, but you can 3D print your own case for it. If you want something for looks, the GLINet ones are great, but you've got to take it apart and you've got to solder some pins. So people usually don't get started with those. So
somebody should just make like a really good Bluetooth proxy and they're like a new Mac brand or something.
That'd be fantastic.
Still around? Do we have more?
If people, by the way, if they are interested in this board, if you go to the ESPHome website, maybe you should look to a camera too. If you go to the ESPHome website, there's a ready-made projects link where you can actually have from your browser install Bluetooth proxies, voice assistants, media players, including the Olimax board is linked there with a ready-made firmware to be installed. And if you just scroll down, there's a link to where you can buy it. So yeah, that's pretty easy to get going. I want to have one final question. This one is for Marcel, which is from ASEC. He's asking, when does Home Assistant Matter integration go out of beta?
Yeah, that's a good when we're ready, no.
Oh, yes.
Well, let's start the certification. We're not allowed to call it an official Matter integration until we're officially certified. And we're going to start that process. We actually spent a year fixing a lot of bugs.
Yeah.
And not only us, but also the vendors, like the hardware on the market was full of bugs. But now it's getting into a shape where we say, okay, we're ready. Let's get this to certification, and maybe they find hundreds of things and we should fix it. But at least we're getting it started. And once we're certified, I think it's really awesome that an open source project gets officially certified, both Z-Wave and Matter, of course.
And Zigbee.
And then we can remove like this beta tag from the. And then we have a few other things in mind, but we're already working on. Last release, we had this improved commissioning, for example, because like the UX was a bit like flaky.
There's a lot of UX inbound.
Yes, so
100% sure.
Due to the flexibility of Matter, it was also a bit complicated, especially for Home Assistant users. So we try to improve it, and we're getting into a shape that's.
So one day we will lose the beta time. Definitely sure.
Sure.
Is that it? Do you have more questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this discussion up. I want to thank you all for joining. And right now, I want to switch to Madelena, who is going to talk about the future and the ideas we have for the open home.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for having me here. Thanks for the introduction, Frank. The music was awesome. Makes me want to dance. Like, this is super professional, right? Like, this is awesome. Like, I really love like how the night has gone. It has been 2 hours. We have been talking about the open home for the past 2 hours. We talk about the past of what we had done to make the open home happen. We had talked about the present of all the projects that we have been working on, from ESPHome to hardware to all the open standards. So now let's talk about the future. So what's in the future? In fact, who can tell what's going to happen in the future? Do we have superpower? Maybe follow our charismatic leader for the golden path? Or do we have a crystal ball? Do we have a crystal ball?
Nope.
Oh, no, we don't. So luckily, that's the job of product management and user experience design. And here I am. I'm Madelena Mak. I'm the lead of the product and design team. So with product management and user experience design, it provides a lot of tried and true methods to really understand what we should do next. So it helps us understand what are the biggest problems we want to solve with the projects and the Open Home Foundation. It helps us understand what the needs of our users are, what are the biggest pain points that we should really get going and make it happen. And also, it helps us mitigate any of the risks that are coming up within the industry, like from our competitors and competitions and so on. So, how do we get started? Well, we need to know what the road ahead is. And what is the road? The road goes from where we are right now, our present state, to the future, which is the best outcome that we're looking for what our open home projects such as ESPHome and Home Assistant will be. And by we, I want to make sure that it's not just about Nabu Casa. We is everyone here in the stream, every one of you here who are watching the stream right now. We are the contributors, the people who are building, supporting the open home projects. We are all here together to build a better future for all our smart homes. So, every year, in the past few years, we have done year after something. We had a theme. So we had streamlining experiences. We had Year of the Voice last year. But we realized that we shouldn't be limited to do just one thing at a time for a year. There's actually a lot of things, a lot of problems we need to solve, a lot of pain points for our user that we need to figure out. So instead of year of just one thing, we're going to have a roadmap. So what is a roadmap? Well, a roadmap is not a strict schedule of what exact feature is going to happen, this, and then. A roadmap is to provide a North Star, to provide a general direction for our community, all the contributors, all the project maintainers, of where do we want the direction of our projects to be. What kind of problems do we want to solve collectively together? That is the roadmap. So luckily, we know where we are now, right? From all the last 2 hours of the presentation. And we also know where we want to be ultimately. Where we want to be ultimately is what Paulus has mentioned in the very beginning. We want to make sure that all the projects on the Open Home Foundation to be the best products that embraces privacy, choice, and sustainability. We want to make sure that there's no corporations spying on us, looking at our data. We want to provide as many open standards as possible for the choice of our users. We want to make sure that we reuse, reduce, recycle, and repurpose, and make sure that there's no planned obsolescence for the products in the smart home that we have. So how do we build a roadmap? Well, that's what I said before. We know where we are and where we want to be. What's the ultimate outcome? And then second, we listen. We listen to you, the users. We listen to users, and we also listen to people who maintain this project. We collected, in the past year, a lot of feedback from each project maintainers. And we also sorted out all the features that we have on Reddit, on our forums, on our GitHub, and we rated and ranked all of them by their importance so that we can prioritize. And we prioritize them by reach, which is how many people this feature or this particular problem we can solve that can reach, how much impact it will have on our users, how much impact it will have on the open home values that we want to uphold. And whether are we confident that this problem exists? If we're not confident if this problem exists, then we'll do research. If we're confident that this problem indeed exists and we really need to solve it, then we'll get going and develop it and design it right away. And last but not the least, I want to say that like a roadmap is a living document. What that means that anything that we are announcing today is not set in stone. It's always up to change, and it's up to like community input to really like refine and make the roadmap better that suits our needs. So let's take a look at the first roadmap, which is for our open standards. So in the coming year, as the panel has previously discussed, Marcel, Nikita, and also Uwe working very hard. All the teams are working very hard on certification. We want to make sure that the Matter server, the Z-Wave, and the Zigbee standards that we provide are up to the industry standards so that people can build their projects upon of what we build. We're working on certifying the Connect CBT1 as well as the Zigbee home automation integration. And we're working hard to make the next set of Connect products for the Z-Wave stick and maybe even more in the future. The next project I want to talk about is The next project I want to talk about is ESPHome. So what do we want ESPHome ultimately become? We want ESPHome to become the easiest and the most powerful platform for makers to create or repurpose the custom smart home devices in their home. And we want to do it with local configuration files that are powerful and simple. And we want to make sure that it can work standalone and also work with Home Assistant and other home automation systems. In terms of the 3 open home values, we want to make sure that this is the best way to build fully local smart home devices. We want to make sure that this is the best flexible solution that can build anything to any needs of all the users in the home. And also support most of the common electronic components so that you can build the most advanced smart home device you can. And lastly, ESPHome is a great way to repurpose any of the dumb devices in your house or appliances in your house so that you can keep using it for years to come while it's also smart and can provide the information you need for your smart home. In the coming year, we're working on continuing fortifying the foundation of the ESPHome project. And there are 4 things we're working on. First, we want to make sure that it has continued compatibility with Home Assistant. ESPHome, so that ESPHome can represent any entities that Home Assistant can represent. For example, Valve entities, daytime entities, and so on. Second, we want to make sure that ESPHome is the best way to build voice assistant hardware for Home Assistant. Third, we want to make sure that it's easy to update any of the ESPHome projects so that community creators selling ESPHome-based products can make sure that all the products they're selling are always up to date for their audiences. And last but not the least, the housekeeping. And what housekeeping means is that we're updating our testing infrastructure to improve our confidence in updating the frameworks that ESPHome relies on. This allows us to adopt new technology and incorporate new features more quickly. So that is ESPHome. Very excited. The next project that I want to talk about is Home Assistant Cloud. And that is the premier project from our commercial partner, Nabukasa. So what do we want Home Assistant Cloud ultimately become? We want Home Assistant Cloud to be the best way to bring any hard-to-reach features that is usually reserved for power users with expensive hardware at home, with no compromise on privacy. For the 3 open home values, we want to make sure that we document all the inner workings for remote access, full transparency, so you know that the connection that you have remotely to your Home Assistant installation is fully private. We want to make sure that you can have all the choices that you have in all the different third-party cloud-connected voice assistant, including Alexa, Google, as well as Home Assistant Assist. And last but not the least, cloud computing is not all bad. There's one thing that is really good at is that it allows you to offload all the resource-intensive tasks to another computer so that you can run a low-power Home Assistant Green at home in just 3 watts, while also can perform resource-intensive tasks such as like speech-to-text or text-to-speech on a computer on the cloud with great voice clarity and also great voice recognition. In the coming year, we're working on making the Home Assistant Cloud to provide better peace of mind for our users. So right now, we are working on hardening our security. We are providing 2-factor authentication for Nabukasa account, and we are going to provide more control on remote access for the users of Home Assistant Cloud. Second, we are going to introduce encrypted cloud backup for Home Assistant Cloud. This allows users to have a more resilient installation of Home Assistant. So if the Home Assistant instance breaks down, there's a way to restore the instance right away from a cloud backup. Last but not the least, we are working towards cloud monitoring. What does that mean? It means that if your Home Assistant instance is down, we will be able to detect it and send email notification to you so that you can make sure that the uptime of your Home Assistant instance remains low and your family will be very happy that it's still running. All right, so we went through the Open Standards ESPHome project as well as the Home Assistant Cloud project. So what's next? Of course, who can forget about Home Assistant? So for Home Assistant, the ultimate goal of what we want the project to be is that we want that to be the best smart home platform that embodies the open home vision, which is privacy, choice, and sustainability. And most importantly, powered by a helpful and open source user community. All these 5 things are important to Home Assistant. What does it mean to be a best smart home platform? It means these 4 pillars. Best automation platform. Best way to conveniently observe and control your smart home by organizing and visualizing information using voice, dashboard, and so on. And then lastly, the ability for a smart home to anticipate, using data to understand context and understand user behavior so that it can orchestrate and predict what to do with the devices. One thing that we learned from the user research that we had done last year is that the Home Assistant user, there are many types of users. The main users that we have, that we usually talk about, are the administrator, the people who install Home Assistant in their household. But what we learned is that the users of the users also matter. And that includes all the people who are living in the house with our Home Assistant user administrators. So that can be the spouse, the kids, their parents, or it can be their guests or their roommates, as well as like people who stop by doing housekeeping or like cleaning or fixing the house. We want to make sure that Home Assistant is great for all of these users, from power users to also any users who are used to like having basically a light switch that works. So we want to make sure that in the coming year, home approval factor is something that we want to improve upon. And that includes 3 aspects. So the theme of the coming year is a home-approved smart home. And for the first thing is dashboard. So as we have seen, we have started making the dashboards better. The first thing is to make dashboards easier to use and customize for everybody. So you've seen that we have rolled out some first version of drag and drop, and we have better tile cards, and we're also introducing the concept of sections. There are more to come. We are redoing a lot of the tile cards as well as the more info dialogues. Second, once we're done with that, we want to move on to build better default dashboards and dashboard blueprints. Right now, the default dashboard really is just a whole giant list of all the entities you have in your Home Assistant setup. We want to make sure that we're going to provide a better summary of what's going on in the house without listing every single thing. There must be a better way to do this. So there are going to be better default dashboards. Lastly, we want to make sure that a very common problem that our user had is that they want to share the dashboard with the guests or like any of the people who are stopping by in the house. We want to have a way to make it easier to do that while preserving the privacy for our users. Another aspect we want to improve on for home approval factor is voice assistant. So if you watched the last chapter, voice chapter 6, you would take a look at the roadmap that we have at the end. We are continuously improving the assist capabilities out of the box. In our user research, we noticed a lot of the users, like other people in the household, like to use the existing voice assistant to start a timer. We don't have a timer yet, so we want to work on that. We want to have better music controls as well. The next step, once we got the capabilities pretty solid, we want to make sure that we get most of the abilities that people use for voice assistant before, like Google Assistant or an Alexa shut down. We're working really hard and fast on that. And after that, we want to make sure that it's easy to start using Assist as much as possible. And that includes software and hardware. There's a hardware that Uwe mentioned earlier. We want to have simple voice assistant satellite hardware that you can plug in and then start getting your Home Assistant Assist set up. We also want to have better onboarding. Right now, to set up your voice assistant, you install like 3 or 4 add-ons before you really get started, and then you have to build a whole voice pipeline with Wyoming protocol, and that's a lot of work for like most users. So we want to streamline that experience as well. Lastly, the third thing we want to improve on is automation. Not everyone needs to build automation, but the ability to easily build automations really will show the strength of the smart home. And it will increase the people, they will make it happier to use Home Assistant, right? Even though you deploy it, they might not be familiar with it. But now, if the house can really react to what they need, they will love Home Assistant even more. So in the last month, we rolled out our first part of what we want to work on for automation, which is to make automations easier to organize. We roll out labels, amazing job from the engineering team, and like the data tables looks absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. We're continuously refining that as well. But the next thing that really excites me is to make automations easier to create. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that we're redoing the automation editor again. In fact, we don't want to change the UI all the time. But what that means is we want to audit the automation engine experience. There are certain tasks right now that are really easy on a competitor's product, but it's really hard to do in Home Assistant. For example, setting up a notification or setting up a scene can be a lot of work right now. We want to make all these, iron out all these wrinkles and make it easier to create automations. Lastly, let's look at the even more further future. And what we want to do is really have Home Assistant embrace privacy, choice, and sustainability. We want it to be the gold standard of data ownership. We want it to be the best platform to integrate anything in the smart home, from any open standard devices, custom devices from ESPHome, as well as any services such as weather, municipal utilities, and so on. And for sustainability, we want to help users optimize their energy usage and also make sure that the durability of the smart home stays for a long time. And with that, it requires research. And there are 5 things they're researching on right now, and we love to have your help. If you're here listening and you're great at any of these things that we had mentioned before, as well as the content, as well as the objectives that we mentioned here, please definitely join us on Discord, talk to our developers, and contribute any ideas, any skills that you have. For user research, we're going to build a foundational research of understanding who our users really are. Right now, we have an idea of who our users are, but we really want to build a clear picture. Figure out the right personas and what the jobs to be done. Next is, we talk about privacy a lot, but privacy is a concept that is very hard to understand and really put in concrete terms. We want to research on what privacy really means to our users. We are also building a better information architecture. Last month, we rolled out floors, but we also want to understand what all the devices that we added to Home Assistant exactly are. We might build a device database, who knows, but we want to build a better understanding of the context so that any automation engine in the future, such as like an AI engine, can understand what it is really automating. Last but not the least, we're investigating in LLMs. AI, it's like everyone's talking about AI. It's a hot trend, but we're not doing it because of that. We're doing that because we know that there are very interesting problems that we can solve with LLMs. For example, it might be able to provide a better summary for the weather for today so that users can listen to it and understand what's going on in their house without even looking at the dashboard. But we need a lot of help in this area. So if you're great at LLMs, please definitely come join us in the Home Assistant project. One thing I really want to emphasize again is that by we, it's not just Nabukasa. We are the contributors, we are the users, we are you are us. And we want all of us to build the future of the Open Home together. Well, we were also Open Foundation together. And there are multiple ways for you to do it. Even though if you're not a developer, there are ways to contribute. And here are the ways. First of all, if you want to donate and support a Home Assistant and the Open Home Foundation and all the projects, please subscribe to the Home Assistant Cloud. That's the best way to contribute donations and monetary support to our organization. Also, if you have any features that you really need and you have a great idea, come on our feature request forum on the Home Assistant community. Come on GitHub for ESPHome to vote and discuss the features and provide feedback. You can also join our user research group. We don't have the link here, but we'll provide that in the description. We are going to send out surveys. We're going to send out invite to user interviews so that we can better understand our users. If you're a language expert or if you have a great voice, you can help us translate and contribute your voice for our voice assistant, for Piper, and also for Assist. If you're really good at teaching people, helping people understand concepts and ideas, feel free to contribute by writing documentations and tutorials or creating video tutorials on YouTube. We have a great creator network. You can join us and we'll support you as a creator of content for our projects. If you're a UX designer or product manager, you can help us manage some of the initiatives we're building and design them. For example, right now we have the scene editor. We have a great contributor, Carlos, built a great code for it, but we need a design for it. So if anyone wants to help with it, please definitely come talk to me on Discord. And last but not the least, if you're a great developer, definitely contribute the code on GitHub. We're working on a lot of projects, so check out our roadmap and so you can see where you can add your code and contribute. So that's all for today for our roadmap and the future of the Open Home projects. And thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you soon.
Oh, that was amazing, Madelena. I am super stoked of what is going to come.
Yes. Future is bright.
The future is bright.
Future is bright, like the backdrop here.
It's bright light.
This is awesome.
Video, yeah.
So I have collected a couple of questions from our community.
Okay.
And the first one is, Pat Rooney wants to know what's in 2024.5. That's a joke. He should just tune in.
It's coming in 2 weeks.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Not as big as the last one.
Yeah. So
Tone down the expectation.
Yeah.
Not a huge.
Now let me just start with some real questions. Pat Rooney was also asking is presence detection on the roadmap?
So right now it's not on the roadmap, but if you want it to be on the roadmap, please definitely come on our feature request forum, like talk about it, increase the awareness of why this like feature is important, and try to get more people to vote for it and talk about it. Yeah. And that would definitely increase like the impact, right? That we know that it will make on our users, and it will prioritize higher.
Well, that's really good to mention, is that if you want us to know what you're going to do with it, please show us examples of like, oh, well, if I had this feature, we could unlock this. If we had
use cases. Yes. Like what kind of problem you're really trying to solve, right? Don't tell us what the solution is. Tell us what the problems are, so that we can help solve.
Go to the community forum, actually, just do a search, see if somebody else already mentioned it.
Yeah.
Because you could as well just have like an upvote on an existing feature request, right? Which will make it rank higher and show higher up and be more noticeable. Secondly, if your use case is not listed there, you could just add it to it. So the list of use cases becomes bigger.
Exactly. Thank you.
This is a question from Glenn Waters. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Is there anything on the roadmap for mobile apps?
Yes, Glenn. So that's actually a part of the roadmap that we're still building right now. There's a lot of cool things coming for iOS. For Android, if you know any development skills for Android, like definitely join the team. We need an Android developer.
We will be opening a position for Android.
There will be a job opening soon, yeah. Great. Here's a front-end related one from Christian Holbjerg. What new card types can we see in the near future?
So what we want to do is, first of all, is to bring all the cards to the same standard of design, right? We're going to renovate a lot of the older cards, right? The entity card and so on, to make it look in the same style of the tile card. There's like a lot of things that we probably want to do with data in future, but I'm not too sure yet. So we could have to investigate into.
Awesome. Okay. Final question then from What Are We Fixing Today? He's asking, when can we expect template blueprints?
What kind for automations, you mean?
For template entities.
Oh,
technically.
Yeah, that's
Technically, that's possible. Just not built yet.
Yeah. No, we have the infrastructure in place.
Infrastructure is there.
It just it's a good idea, and it's something that I guess it has been coming up like in discussions.
Yeah, for multiple things, it's just not templates. I'm thinking about like REST, for example, and mini integrations and things like that. And like, oh, there's so many possibilities with blueprints. So yeah.
Yeah. Once again, like this is a great solution, but it would be great to understand what the use cases are, right? What kind of problem we're helping solving.
No, definitely. Yeah, I think that we're going to wrap it up.
Oh, wow. It?
This was it. Yeah.
Yay.
We announced some good stuff today.
Foundation is there.
I am super stoked about the foundation, what it's going to unlock, the way it's going to organize us, the way we can, make a bigger fist to the world.
Yeah, definitely. I think I look to the future the most. Like, it's always so surprising what the community does and comes up with. Not just thinking about, also like delivering contributions. They always deliver on the promise. That's always how we often say, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very curious, besides what we are thinking about, what the community comes up with the upcoming years, because it's always like a crazy ride. A roller coaster I'm enjoying.
Yes, same here.
Yeah.
So if you can't get enough of us, in 2 weeks, we will be back with the Home Assistant release party.
Yep.
Until then, please like and subscribe. Right?
The thumbs up.
And,
we did our best. I would say this would be definitely the best production we've ever done.
That's definitely for sure. Yeah. And and if you wanna support the Open Home, please subscribe to Home Assistant Cloud by Nabukasa. It pays our salaries, and so that we can keep going. And thank you so much all for watching, and we'll see you next time.